Tonight, the city of Lagos waits at dark as all routes.
Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV News.
24-hour news station.
Yes, welcome this morning to Core Digest. I am Sheyi Martins. The recent reports are credited to the Oba of Lagos endorsing a candidate of Chief Akinwumi Ambode as the next governor of Lagos State has taken a ripple into various areas and comments and suggestions from various parts of the community. Not only the political community now are taking divergent views of why should the Oba openly endorse a candidate from a party. Well, before we introduce our guest to you to discuss this issue, first we will remind you, because we're going to bring you a report on that incident where the Oba of Lagos endorsed Akinwumi Ambode as the preferred governor of Lagos after Fashola. Let's take that report.
The choice of who becomes the governor of Lagos, the nation's commercial nerve center, is always a subject of interest to frontline politicians, traditional rulers, and the business community in the country. The tenure of the incumbent Lagos State Governor, Babatunde Fashola, will end in less than 10 months from now, and the struggle for who occupies the Lagos House next is gathering momentum. However, the media is awash with various names as those that will succeed Fashola. All of the speculations appear to have come to an end when the paramount ruler of Lagos, Oba Riliwan Akiolu, who is considered a strong power broker in the state, declared that the choice of Ambode as the next governor of Lagos is non-negotiable. The occasion was the launching of a book titled The Art of Selfless Service, written by Marina Oshoba in honor of Akinwumi Ambode, who was the former Accountant General in Lagos. The national leader of the All Progressives Congress and former governor of Lagos State, Bola Tinubu, was represented by Fola Otowari at the launch. A poured out encomium on Ambode as a visionary and dedicated leader who is committed to selfless service to humanity.
As that young, ambitious, and highly determined Nigerian who defied his humble beginnings at Ekpe to become a public finance management expert.
Lagos State Governor Babatunde Fashola describes Ambode's tenure under his administration as one of the most rewarding. He was represented by Oluransi Adebule.
This morning to discuss the issue of what you heard the Kabiyesi said there, Achuke Chude, who is a political analyst as well as a journalist, is here with us, as well as Dr. Sylvester Odion Ahikene. Ahaine, Sylvester. Well, gentlemen, you're welcome to our studios.
Thank you.
Well, let's take it from the point of view that I, the Oba of Lagos, said Ambode is the preferred candidate for governorship of Lagos. Let's start with you, Sylvester.
Well, in journalism, you know the usual thing that facts are sacred, comments free. You know, and I think that the Oba of Lagos was expressing his fundamental human rights of expression. And because politics is a process, you know, it's a process. But what it does point to is the deficit in our system. Because candidates could be endorsed within caucuses in the context of real functioning political parties. You know, but we don't have that here. And so a prominent, you know, citizen goes out to announce in the open his endorsement, of a particular candidate. Again, when the Electoral Commission has not given the green light, for open campaign, an endorsement. And of course, people talked about the neutrality of traditional rulers. I remember very well, I ran for the House of Reps in Edo. And when we go to the traditional rulers, they pray the same prayer for all the candidates, and they tell you, may your hand be on top of your competitors, and all that. That prayer goes to every candidate, despite the fact that they might have their preference, for a particular candidate. But coming out openly to, to do what he did, the Oba, I think it's a bit, undiplomatic. It's not diplomatic enough to do that, because he's the monarch, and every citizen or indigene of Lagos is a subject to the monarch, and so to that extent he ought to display, outright neutrality.
Dr. Sylvester, do you share the same opinion with him, considering the fact that he even said that everybody has freedom of expression? Taking aside the fact that it's not close to campaign time, what if we were close to elections and everybody has free will to say, this is who I want?
Yeah, I mean, do I share the same sentiments with Dr. Sylvester?
Yes, Achike.
Yeah, I think I would agree with him. I mean, everything he said, I think it's on point. He did talk about his candidacy, for the Federal House of Representatives, and the fact that each person that comes before the Oba is prayed for the same way, and so on, even if he has his own preferred candidate. And that reminds me of a story. Was it a footballer, European footballer, that told, or I think they had gone to see the Pope, and they were asking for special prayers, perhaps to win the World Cup. And then they were told that the Pope does not take sides. So this is the thing. But, when the Oba was talking, he gives the impression that somewhere along the line that a consensus has been formed. He used the word, the world, is in agreement that Akiwumi should be the next governor of Lagos State. Now, we know that traditional rulers, sometimes when they talk, they want to talk in the first person plural, we instead of I. So one might also attribute that to him again. But again, Sylvester talks about maybe lack of diplomacy in his public utterance. I would agree, utterance. I would agree to some extent. But again, there is implication. And that implication could be, first of all, was he trying to railroad the party hierarchy into a particular direction? You understand? Now that will put, because he's a revered monarch in Lagos State, he's first among all the Obas and traditional rulers in the state. So I want to believe that he's much revered by the political elites in Lagos State, especially those, who could make the ultimate decision later. Now, is he trying to railroad them into, box them in a corner, make it difficult for them to come up with somebody else later, in order not to slight him? But again, politics is, as they say, it can be a strange game sometimes. They might, because if they do decide not to go along with the candidature that he has publicly declared support for, it could have a way of showing, one would have the impression that they will be disrespectful, or that they are being disrespectful towards him, at the end of the day. But again, that there are so many permutations. So if he had spoken without due consultation, or without having heard from people who matter in that sense, of course, when we talk about people who matter, we're not talking about the people who are going to go there to maybe during the primaries to pick up a candidate. In Nigeria, these people are usually anointed. They are picked before the people are actually allowed to exercise whatever franchise they want them to exercise.
Really?
So yeah, that is exactly what happens. Of course, you talk about godfatherism in Nigerian politics. That is what determines at the end of the day. So when a choice has been made, they put it to the people, and then get the people to move in a particular direction, and that's what happens. So I hope he will not have shot himself in the foot by speaking too early.
Sylvester, would you say the implication of this endorsement will put other aspirants willing to throw in their hearts a little fuzzy? Shake your thoughts?
I think that it has several implications. You don't take the cohesion within the party for granted.
Indeed not. Indeed not.
Those who are aspiring, I know many of them. You know, the speaker was mentioned at some point. Muiz Banire was mentioned at some point. These are all, you know, individuals who are aspiring for that office. And it could lead to one thing. You know, you disobey the party rules. You know, your loyalty to the party, you know, is no longer, you know, just there. So you begin to shop for other platforms and the rest of them. But beyond that, Lagos has a sophisticated electorate. You remember 91, Agbala Jobi and Sarumi, you know, when they voted, you know, for the party members for the House and gave the governorship to an opposing party. You know, that kind of possibility is also there. You know, okay, you want to impose this candidate on us. Well, you have your candidate, but we'll have our candidate. So it has several implications. And for me, you know, as we move towards the 2015 general election, I feel that generally in terms of the electoral fortune of APC, you know, nationwide, that it needs, you know, to tread softly. Against the background of what is happening in Edo, where most of the leading members of the APC have decamped to PDP. About 3 days ago, 4 members in the House moved to PDP.
Yes.
And so as far as I'm concerned, APC is on its way out in Edo. And the state is going to go back to the conservatives, you know.
Before we get to that, I want to ask you, what is the place of traditional rulers in politics?
Well, first and foremost, they are supposed to be guardians of our heritage. You know, they are supposed to symbolize our link with the past. Even though we live in the present also, but you cannot talk about the present and the future without the past. So theirs is a very, very important institution, you know, and over time, of course, you will know that with the advent of modernity and the change in the politics of the country, the fact that we no longer have separate kingdoms, you know, Nigeria has become a very much bigger geopolitical experience. And so what happens is that over time, as a result of the need for or the exigency of the national imperative, the influence of traditional rulers has gone down drastically, seriously. And they do not really exercise so much power outside of you know, cultural activities and so on. But that is not to say that especially where you have in areas where traditional rulers have conducted themselves very well, they still tend to have a lot of support and sympathy from the people. And so you want to also be very careful, if you're a politician, not to cross paths with a very, very popular, you know, traditional ruler. Because if you talk about grassroots politicking and so on, well, I am from Onitsha, and I know that the traditional institution in Onitsha is a very, very revered institution. And so when the Obi of Onitsha makes a categorical statement on certain things, the people tend to move in that direction. And so you want to disregard him if you're a politician at your political peril most of the time. But again, that is not to say that people also do not know that there are also limits and there are also boundaries for traditional rulers. And they are not expected to go beyond these boundaries. They are still quite influential in a way, and like I said, especially depending on how some of them conduct themselves. You know, of course, you know that this national conference, because of the diminution of their role over the years, some of them have been looking for a way to, you know, get back to the mainstream of Nigerian politics. Some of them were involved in the first republic.
Indeed, indeed. I was going to bring that aspect of history back, because let's not forget that we had a traditional ruler who was a governor. Oba Aderemi Adesoji, the Oni of Ife, was a governor of the Western region. And with that kind of force and the linkage and the power that the Oba Adesoji Aderemi had, I mean, it behoves on other traditional rulers, because I remember then the Akezwa, when the Midwest became as a region, Akezwa had that political influence as well to say to Osadebe that no, we are not going to move in that direction. And that was what happened. So this is what the traditional rulers are beginning to crave for. Should this be another trend in that direction, what Oba Akinolu has just espoused?
Well, let's take for granted that they have residue of power, you know, having transited from, you know, absolute monarchs, you know, of those days, pre-colonial era, to what they are now. I think that we must understand the implication of what it takes to be the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ruled by law.
And the Constitution.
And so, and not by monarchs. You know, they have traditional roles which they have continued to play, and on the basis of that, they earn loyalty from their subjects, in quote. But to constitutionalize their powers, I think is to, you know, further adulterate, you know, the democratic process in this country. Let them remain. I mean, look at it this way. If you come to a place like Lagos, where in terms of determining who traditional rulers are, a governor wakes up and appoints somebody as Bale, and it gets through you know, several processes of being promoted to first-class Oba. And the children, you know, begin to call themselves princess and princess. You know, that institution has been perverted. Monarchs, you know, that we know in those days, where, you know, I mean, they had a kind of what I would call right of primogeniture. Depends on how, you know, the rule that operates within a particular domain. You know, you're the 7 sons of Oromiyan. You know, in Benin, the 4th son of the Oba. So there was no dispute about it. Now you appoint, you know, balance on the basis of political patronage, and the rise to become first-class Oba, you know, and the rest of that. Then you want to constitutionalize the rules of this individual. And I think it's to further adulterate our democratic system.
Yeah, yeah, that is the truth. And of course, if you look at the pattern, and it's good he talked about the mode of, yes, you know, getting into power for most of them. And it's not just in Yoruba land, or virtually all over the country. Now you see people, I mean, most of it's either they are retired generals that have become Obas, or retired police, you know, commissioners, or you know, those of a high-ranking, you know, police hierarchy, or customs, those in the customs, or immigration, and so on and so forth. These are the people that find themselves in power today, and it's the same people again, you know, that you also find in, even at the National Assembly, the military or retired military generals and so on, maybe more or less riding, who have ridden roughshod over the people, now finding their ways into the corridors of power. And I think that, you know, the wonderful thing about this is this, you know, this observation. I was on a, you know, radio program some time ago. We were also discussing, you know, the traditional institution, and I think a lady called in and said, look, it would appear that the oracles have also taken sides, you know, with the rich and the powerful and the influential. It is no longer about, you know, somebody who is of royal descent, of royal blood, but who does not have what it takes in terms of power and influence and money, being found worthy by the oracles to become an Oba or an Obi or an Emir and so on. It is always the powerful, it is always the retired generals and so on and so forth that the oracle seems to find favor with. And so that could also tell you something about even the dilution of you know, the process of even picking up the traditional ruler. And then again, over time, they have also lost, you know, their influence, even in places where we thought that they were extremely very powerful. For instance, the Sadan of Sokoto, that was I think removed by the military at the time. I think it was Machido under, you know, Abacha. And I think Obasanjo, even when he was president, also removed one again from the north, somewhere in the north. And we have state governors at their whims and caprices, you know, waking up one day and then just deciding that they've had enough of the face of a particular traditional ruler, and then subsequently removing him. So what has happened is that it now makes these people extremely subservient to the political leadership of their state or the country and so on. And so you find a situation where he who pays the piper ultimately dictates the tune. Yeah, and of course, when the governors or the president or so is in a position to determine what comes to a traditional ruler and so on, you find a situation where in most cases, even where such governors become unpopular, the traditional ruler, who is supposed to be the custodian of the prestige and the pride of his people, ends up playing the political game by aligning himself with an unpopular ruler or governor.
Let's go back in history a little. You're from Edo State.
Yes, please.
Pre-colonial era, we got to know that the two kingdoms that had well-structured governance, we had Benin and we had Oyo Empire. Do you think that if, according to some who have carved out opinions that the colonial masters destructed everything, do you think if really that traditional institution was put in place and that is what we still follow, governance will be better today?
Well, I think you must understand that Africa was undergoing an evolutionary process. And I can tell you in the case of Oyo that you just mentioned and Benin, they were well-structured administration. You know, they had prime ministers, you know, they had a council of ministers, and the rest of them, you know, they have judicial officials everywhere, and they have diplomats, you know. So it was, I mean, they had the full paraphernalia of a modern state, in quote, at that time, you know. And again, if those kingdoms, separate kingdoms, were allowed to remain on their own, they would have evolved into separate countries, or some may have entered into federations, you know, on their own. But that process was undermined by colonial dispensation because they have to bring in their own structure. So even in places where they found the traditional institutions very good because of their own centralized, you know, mode of governance, they adopted them. You know, they allowed them to stay. In the north, where the emirate system functions very well, they allowed the emirate system, you know, and the native administration, you know, system, which was where even the local government structure we talk about today actually evolved, you know, from. So it's not a question about saying a particular era was better. That era, it worked for our people, you know, before the colonial came in. But when they came in, they undermined it because all institutions of state have to be subjected, you know, to the supremacy of the colonial masters. And that's basically what happened. And so people talk about the democratic crisis today as a cultural crisis because we had behind us those vestiges, you know, of the past. And they mingle or intermingle with, you know, modern institutions of governance. And that's where we are today. So it's not a question about which was better, because you have in Nigeria a Nigerian federation in which all the so-called Asian kingdoms were now brought together as one country. So they no longer subsist as such.
Thank you very much. Mr. Achike, we want to take reactions of Lagosians to the endorsement of Oba Rilwan Akiolu. And I want you to watch with this question of, should the Oba just be distant from politics and not say anything at all? Or should he embrace everybody with equal hands or just be neutral? Can an Oba really be neutral? Let's take this report and we'll be back for your own reaction.
Just a year to the end of the tenure of the current administration in Lagos State, different groups have been jostling for who takes over the governorship of Lagos from Babatunde Fashola. Politicians within Lagos APC are beginning to signify interest to become the next chief executive of the nation's economic hub. Also, the Lagos chapter of the Christian Association of Nigeria have joined in the argument that the next governor of Lagos State must be a Christian extraction. Addressing religious leaders at the opening ceremony of this interfaith conference, Governor Fashola emphasizes that ability to deliver good governance to the people and not religion should be the yardstick to choose who will succeed him in office.
A group claims that it is insisting on a Christian governor. You know, people can demand things. But I don't recall the last time the governor of Lagos State was elected on his religious beliefs. I don't recall it ever happened there. And in any event, what will the preference for a governor of one faith over the other really benefit us? Will he give one religion roads that the other faith cannot use? Will it give them schools that children from the other faith will not be able to use? Or will it bring water that only one faith can drink? Or will it begin then to draw a very clear line between poverty and the faiths? Does hunger know your faith?
On the current security challenges facing the nation, Fashola says religious tolerance is key to harmonious existence among Nigerians. This conference is targeted at engendering religious understanding and development.
That should have been the reports to take on the next segment, but notwithstanding the issue of what the people are saying in regards to the endorsement of the Oba of Lagos of a candidate in the next governorship election post Fashola is what will come your way when we've taken this break. Let's not forget, Core Digest continues after the news on the hour, which is coming to you very shortly. In a moment, our guests are still here, and we expect you to take all of your comments as we go along on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So our Twitter calling, our Facebook, you know it. Aha, okay, we take that again. That's Facebook,
facebook.com/Core TV News.
Excuse me. Core TV News. Ebu, could you take the rest, please?
And our Twitter handle at Core TV News NG. And of course, you can view our programs and news on youtube.com/Core TV. You put a space and then news. We'll go for a break now.
Nigerians continue to travel the city of Lagos.
There is still a poor level of
Be the first to know from the north, south, east, west, and around Africa. We break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV News.
24-hour news station.